evening. I'm Patricia Vallone with a CTV News update. A year into the pandemic, and Prince George's school teachers returned to the classroom today. This was the scene this morning at William Wirt Middle, where schools chief Dr. Monica Goldson greeted staffers. The school system says about 42,000 students are expected to participate in hybrid learning in April, but Goldson has educators returning early. Teachers tell us that they're glad to have a few weeks to prepare.
I think it'll help us all, get back into the mindset of being in the building, learning how to transition between the classes. I think right now the plan is that the teachers will be moving and the students will stay in their rooms. So I'm grateful that we'll have some time to adjust to that. I think I'd be much more overwhelmed if the students were coming today or tomorrow.
Was it a shock to their system? Probably was. They haven't been in the building for a year, some of them. But we are more than confident that the provisions that we put in place to keep them safe will do that.
Students will head back starting April 8th. Latinos account for more than 30% of the nation's COVID cases, despite making up only 18% of the current population. That's according to the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. During a recent webinar, the organization discussed issues of equitable vaccine distribution, vaccine hesitancy within Latino communities, and long-term implications of the pandemic.
The American Rescue Plan addresses disparities, $27 billion to address health disparities and protect vulnerable populations for the duration of the pandemic. It helps our community health centers, which are on the front lines in administering these vaccines to our underserved populations. Similar to the CARES Act, the American Rescue Plan allocates $7.6 billion in funding to further support COVID-19 response efforts at our community health centers.
The elderly who can get the vaccines have to be accompanied with an adult child or who should be getting vaccinated, but because that adult is 40 years old and in good health, that person is not being vaccinated. So there's a lot of barriers right now, I think. The other one is because people are not many people are not in community health centers or attached to a hospital. They're not getting that phone call that says, come and get your vaccinations, right? So our community is being disconnected that way.
For more information on COVID-19 resources, you can go to chci.org. Labor activists pressure state lawmakers to use American Rescue Plan funds for essential workers. They're demanding that legislators allocate federal rescue money to an Essential Workers Fairness Fund. It would be used to cover costs for hazard pay and paid leave.
Many of these folks, they could have stayed home, but they made the decision to still go out and work in person. Lacking a lot of the, folks didn't have masks. Or if they had a mask, they were asked to reuse it over and over and over again, or they didn't have a proper mask, or they didn't have the proper fits. So a lot of, folks still went out and, performed their duties.
The General Assembly is currently considering an emergency bill that would require essential workers to receive hazard pay, PPE, and paid health leave. Meantime, Maryland is reporting 917 new coronavirus cases in the last 24 hours, and an additional 19 Marylanders have died from the virus. That brings the state's total death toll to more than 7,900. Currently, 805 residents are in the hospital with COVID-19. A Brandywine man has been arrested on child sex abuse charges. He is 34-year-old Daryl Hooker Orange. He has been charged with 1 count of sexual solicitation of a minor and 6 counts of possession of child pornography. According to Maryland State Police, the suspect had online and cell phone conversations with a 12-year-old girl. Authorities also say Orange exchanged nude photos with the victim. 3 additional arrests are made in the murder of Laurel attorney Brian Bregman, who was also a reserve D.C. police officer. U.S. Marshals have arrested 19-year-old Fabian Tinsley of Hyattsville and 19-year-old Sam Mofor of Bowie. Among the charges, first and second-degree murder, home invasion, and first-degree assault. 20-year-old Michael Phelps of Bowie was charged as an accessory after the fact for his role in disposing of evidence related to the homicide. That brings the total number of those arrested and charged in this case to 5. Bregman was found dead in his Main Street home February 3rd after police responded to reports of a burglary. Maryland gained 6,800 jobs during the month of January, that according to the State Department of Labor. The agency says the January unemployment rate dropped to 6.4%. That is the lowest jobless rate since the start of the pandemic. And you're watching CTV News. I'm Patricia Vallone. We'll be back in just a moment.
You're looking at me in the future. Okay. Hi, Isaac.
Hi.
Wait a second.
Do you know who I am?
Julia.
This is Jaina. Into the future.
I just wanted to talk to you about what happened with those two girls.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember it was this girl that I was getting bullied by that one day at PE when they were like yelling at me, and then you just linked arms with me? I don't think you know how much like that helped me, because like I finally like knew that I had somebody. Because of you, Isaac, and what you did for me years ago, I grew up to be more independent and love myself and just be a little bit more confident.
Aw, I'm like a little tearing up right now. Just to see her in the future just blossom and look beautiful, and that was really amazing.
I moved to Florida with literally pennies in my pocket and a prayer. I needed a new start. Dacian looks like a very typical 3-year-old until you ask him, "What's your name? How old are you?" My son has a lot of behaviors that would show as being autistic. Most kids can tolerate a variety of foods, but unfortunately for Dacian, everything has to be organic and raw. I wasn't ashamed to go to the food pantries. It's expensive to eat healthy, and nutrition is very important to Dacian's health. The healthy organic food that we receive dramatically helped his social skills. Most people would say she really doesn't have much of a life, but to me, I have everything right there next to me and my son.
Welcome back. In national news, Atlanta police arrest 21-year-old Robert Long for allegedly fatally shooting 8 people at 3 spas yesterday. 6 of the victims in the attacks are reportedly Asian. This deadly attack comes as Asian American hate crimes are on the rise across the country. The nonprofit group Stop AAPI Hate has released a report showing nearly 3,800 anti-Asian incidents in the last year. Meantime, California State University study shows that anti-Asian hate crimes in 16 of America's largest cities went up 149% last year. The Maryland Democratic Party is touting the benefits of the American Rescue Plan and criticizing Republicans who have come out against it. State Party Chair Yvette Lewis says Marylanders will benefit greatly from the $1.9 trillion package. She says more than $5 billion will go to state and local fiscal relief. $2 billion will go to public schools. Money is also earmarked for mass transit. Lewis is highly critical of Republicans who say the plan signed into law by Biden goes way too far.
How do you determine way too far when people can't put food on the table, when people can't pay rent, when children don't have access to internet and broadband and they can't go back to school? How do you determine way too far when people have been in this situation for over a year? There comes a point where you have to decide, are you for the people or are you not? The Democrats are showing every single day that they are for the people.
Meantime, the advocacy group Strong Future Maryland is working to expand tutoring programs for school-age students. The American Rescue Plan includes $1 billion in funding for the AmeriCorps Volunteer Public Service Program. John King, along with Delaware Senator Chris Coons, is working to establish long-term tutoring programs to help kids who fell behind academically during the pandemic. He says studies show some students have lost as much as 12 months of learning.
So we've got to make up for that. A national tutoring corps can be a part of that. So these AmeriCorps dollars can fund tutoring programs. You can imagine recent college graduates, retired teachers, to come in and work in small groups, 2-on-1, 3-on-1 with students intensively and help them make up ground academically.
King says he expects the Corporation for National Service, which runs the AmeriCorps program, to roll out the application process for new programs such as tutoring initiatives in the coming weeks. Well, one of the most urbanized watersheds in the U.S. has suffered from years of human impact. The Anacostia River and its tributaries are continually littered with pollution from plastic bags to styrofoam. Now, new research shows that microplastics have been found in the waterway. Microplastics are about the size of a grain of rice or sand.
There's different types of microplastics that were made to be small, like those little beads, and stuff that breaks down, from like plastic bags that tears apart, plastic bottles, this type of stuff. But right now the research is kind of being already conducted. That's what's crazy about microplastics, is that we know so much about them and where they are and everything like that, but we also know nothing about them, i.e. what could they do to humans if ingested, because we are ingesting them. There's all these studies coming out. You eat a credit card's worth of microplastic a year or something like that. But research is currently being done on what that really can do to humans in water. In the Anacostia, as an example, they could be potential vectors for bacteria, other pathogens, things like this, because they like to kind of hitch a ride on those microplastic particles, because they like to stick onto them. So that's a current area of hot research in microplastic contamination, is what they can actually do to humans, and their potential threat to humans, but also to the ecology of the water systems. What can they do to organisms? Are they getting in fish, which we know they are? And then if we eat those fish, are they getting into us? So there's a lot of questions that are currently being asked and researched surrounding the potential health threats of microplastics.
The organization says all samples collected throughout the Anacostia watershed tested positive for microplastic contamination. Today is St. Patrick's Day, and state police are putting out their usual warning: don't drink and drive. Police are urging those who plan to celebrate with alcohol to do so safely. Troopers will be conducting saturation patrols on major roads, looking for impaired, aggressive, and distracted drivers. According to the Department of Transportation, 151 people died on Maryland's roads from impaired driving crashes in 2019. With more than 3,200 injuries. Officials recommend that you designate a sober driver, take a taxi cab, or use public transportation. Now let's get a quick check on our 3-day weather forecast. Tonight, rainy and patchy fog with a low of 45. Thursday, rain with a high of 55 and a low around 27. Friday, more rain with a high near 45 and a low around 30. And Saturday, it warms up. Has nice sunshine with a daytime high near 50 and an evening low around 33. And now for your community calendar, the Maryland National Parks and Planning Commission continues to celebrate Black history throughout the month of March. Learn about medical history of the African American community from past to present. Check out a series of mini docs, interviews, and more every morning at 10 a.m. through March 31st. For more information, you can visit pgparks.com. And that wraps up our CTV News Update. Join us again tomorrow at 4:30. Have a great night.
I am what child hunger looks like in America. I am a 9-year-old boy who hopes a friend invites me to a sleepover so I can have dinner. I am a 15-year-old girl who goes for walks during lunch so my friends won't know I don't have anything to eat. I am a 13-year-old boy who gets into fights at school just because I'm hungry. I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 7 American children who struggle with hunger. Kids you pass by every day but never knew they were hungry.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
It's so sad. It's not.